Hi, happy winter solstice. And this year, instead of writing a blog, I thought I'd record a video and do a little bit of discussion and then a practice. So, first of all, what is the winter solstice? Well, I guess we all know that the winter solstice is the day where daylight is shorter than night. So, we have a much longer night and it's the shortest day of the year. And this year, the actual solstice falls at about 3:30 tomorrow morning, Friday morning. So traditionally, the solstice would always be celebrated around the 21st. And our ancestors who lived on these islands hundreds and thousands of years before us would have celebrated. We know that actually, right from the Stone Age era, we know that our ancestors were celebrating the winter solstice. And we know from sort of later archaeological finds that part of this celebration would have included bonfires, and bonfires would have been probably burnt regularly, probably each night for about a week. And so this is why the celebration of Christmas falls in this period. So it's during that week when there would have been a lot of bonfires happening. And what's the difference between a bonfire and another form of fire? So traditionally, again, for our ancestors, there would have been two types of fire. The hearth fire, which was obviously for keeping the living space warm and for cooking, boiling water, all of those essential things. And then you would have had a bonfire, which you would only have had at certain times of the year. And this time of year in particular, the word actually comes from bone fire. So it was the fire where any animals that weren't going to survive the winter would have been slaughtered, and any parts of the animal which couldn't be put to use in any other way would have been put on a big bone fire, along with any other rubbish that needed to be disposed of. But of course, it wasn't just burnt and then forgotten about, because everything that was burnt on the bone fire would then, when it was cooled, it would have been collected, the ashes would have been collected and turned into bone meal, and then that would have been spread on the ground, on the fields, or the ground around the living area to enrich the soil. And of course, we still buy bone meal now to do exactly that. So no part of the animal went to waste. And so one of the sort of traditional ways of celebrating the winter solstice would have been to gather around the bonfire and to say goodbye to those things that we're ready to let go of, and to welcome in those things that we want to grow and nurture. And of course, we would have done that in very practical ways, like I've just described, but it also had a symbolic meaning, and we know that through archaeological evidence that's been found. It wasn't just purely a practical thing, it was very much a symbolic, and you could say a spiritual practice. So the practice that I wanted to offer for you today, it came to me when I was reading something which reminded us to reframe some of the thoughts that we have when we're really busy. And this is a particularly busy time of year. We're in the last few days before Christmas, and it can get really hectic, and we can just forget what this time of year is about, what we're really meant to be focusing on at this time of year. And that could be the spiritual aspect of Christmas. It could be celebrating the birth of Christ. It could be celebrating family. It could be having a holiday. There are all sorts of reasons why we pause at this time of the year. And it's not a coincidence that Christmas was chosen to be celebrated at this time of year. We know Jesus wasn't born in the middle of winter. He was more likely to have born actually around Easter. But it was celebrated at this point of year because it fitted so well with what we were already celebrating, which is we're looking for the first glimmer of hope, the first light in the darkness. So once we've got through the solstice, we then know that the days are going to be lengthening, light is returning, the warmth will come. And of course, for our ancestors, that was incredibly important, because you were much more likely to fall ill and have serious illness and die during the winter than the summer. Obviously, there were lots of other things happening in the summer which could cause accidents and injury. But if you were cold and hungry, then obviously your body has to work much harder to keep you well and to keep you alive. So the winter time, when it was cold, when there was not as much food around, was a much more dangerous time of year for our ancestors. So the promise of spring, the promise of new food, the promise of longer, warmer days, of water that wasn't frozen, all of those things would have made life much easier for our ancestors. So that was very much looked forward to. So one of the things about the solstice is to remind us that even in our darkest moments, these moments don't last forever, that the light will return, the warmth will return again. So there's a lot we can focus on, but of course we get very distracted with all the busyness and the doing. So this sentence that I read recently reminded us to think, instead of I've got to do this, as I get to do this. And it really helps us to reframe. So instead of really feeling overwhelmed and thinking I've got this to do and that to do and the other to do, I've got all of these things that I've got to do, we can actually step back from that and just think, actually, I'm really lucky that I get to do these things. I'm lucky that I have people that need to be cared for, that need to have food prepared for them. I'm lucky that I can afford to buy presents that need wrapping, for example. I'm lucky that I have a home to decorate. So instead of thinking I've got to, let's think about I get to. So that's going to be the focus for our short practice. So it's just a 5-minute or so practice. So just encouraging you now, inviting you to get comfortable for the next 5 minutes or so. And just maybe taking a slightly deeper breath, sighing out. And if you're noticing as you come into this practice that you're feeling very tight, if you're feeling that there's tension, that the breath is quite shallow, then you might like to try straw breathing. So just taking a few breaths where you purse the lips, breathe in through the nose and breathe out as if you're blowing very slowly through a straw. And this has the effect of slowing down the out breath. So just try that 2 or 3 times now. And reminding ourselves that whenever we slow down the out breath, it sends that message to the vagus nerve, to the whole of the body, to the nervous system, that we're safe, that it's okay to come out of sympathetic state and into parasympathetic state. So slowing down the heart rate, giving that instruction to the body that it can just slow down the production of stress hormones and it can start to produce those feel-good hormones that help the body feel rested. It helps our digestion, our immune system, all of those neurotransmitters and hormones that help the body function at its best. And then when you're ready, just inviting you to picture that bonfire now. And you may want to picture this bonfire surrounded by friends and family, maybe your ancestors, or you may want to just be alone, just have this quiet time, just watching this bonfire. And just getting a sense that we can place whatever's no longer needed for this year onto this bonfire. So the solstice represents, in many ways, a time of the year when we can let go of what is no longer serving us. So just suggesting that one of the things we might like to let go of this year is this belief of all the things that we've got to do. So in act-based mindfulness, we focus a lot on values, living a life that's aligned to our values. And we do that by checking what's really important to us. And some of the things that we feel we've got to do actually aren't aligned to our personal values. So maybe some of those could just be got rid of anyway. Maybe we could just throw those ideas onto the bonfire. So beginning by checking if there's anything that you think you've got to do that actually isn't that important to you. And often that's what causes the tension. So just checking if there's anything that you could just cross off that to-do list. It could be just a habit, it could be a belief that you picked up years ago. Does it really have to be done? So anything that doesn't really have to be done, that can go. And that creates space for the things that really do matter, that are important to us. And there will be things left that we feel we've got to do. It might be getting the washing done, or the shopping, or the cooking, cleaning, all of those practical things. So let's just see if we can turn that on its head. So just bringing to mind something that's left that you feel that you've got to do, and just looking at it in a slightly different way and saying to yourself, I get to do this. I get to do this. If you've ever been unwell, you'll know that there are times when you physically can't do the shopping or the cooking or the cleaning. So if you're able to do that, celebrating that. I get to go shopping. I have the means with which to go shopping and choose things. I get to wash my clothes. I have water and detergent and a washing machine. So see if we can bring a sense of celebration now as we stand in front of this bonfire. Throwing on the bonfire anything that doesn't need to be done. All that energy can go into other projects. When you come to rake over the ashes and spread it over the land, all of that energy can be used elsewhere, maybe for healing yourself, maybe for spending time with loved ones and really enjoying it. And then there are the things that really need to be done. So let's throw onto the bonfire all of those tensions, those difficult feelings about whatever these activities are. And instead, see if we can be left with a sense of celebration or thankfulness that we get to do these things. So now when you're ready, imagining that the fire is burning itself out. And if you're with people in your imagination, then you might like to do a happy dance, have a hug, do a big cheers and toast the solstice, eat food. And if you're just standing peacefully, enjoying your own company, just sighing out as the fire burns itself out, knowing that the glowing embers will gradually cool and what will be left can be used for more helpful purposes over the next year. And see if we can use this longest night as a time for reflection and a time for healing, resting, before we go into the next few days of busyness. So when you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, opening your eyes, stretching your body. So thank you for joining me for this practice, and wishing you all the best for the solstice and for the lengthening days that come, and wishing you much joy, all blessings over Christmas and the new year. And I shall be back soon. In the meantime, lots of love.